Bugsy Siegel isn't just some gangster from the old days. He's more like the blueprint for the Hollywood-style mobster. Imagine James Bond crossed with a psychopath. Charming, good-looking, well-dressed, but with absolutely no hesitation to kill you if it made his day easier. Born Benjamin Siegelbaum in Brooklyn, Bugsy clawed his way up through the underworld ranks, running with the infamous Jewish mob and teaming up with none other than Meyer Lansky. But while New York gave him his start, Los Angeles gave him something even bigger, a playground where crime and showbiz were so tangled, it was hard to tell who was acting and who was really dangerous. Siegel didn't just arrive in Los Angeles like another East Coast gangster looking to expand. He showed up with confidence, swagger, and a plan. LA in the 1930s was booming. Oil fields, booming movie studios, political corruption, and a population exploding with new money and old secrets. It was basically an open market for anyone bold enough to grab it. And Bugsy, he didn't ask permission. He set up shop and made it clear. The West Coast wasn't off limits to the mob anymore. What Al Capone did in Chicago, Siegel wanted to do in LA, only with more flash, more connections, and way more bodies if needed. The moment he hit the scene, Bugsy opened the Clover Club, one of the hottest spots in Hollywood, and instantly turned it into his personal control center. But this wasn't just a nightclub, it was a living facade. Celebrities partied upstairs under glittering chandeliers, while extortion, blackmail, and deal-making went down below. Politicians drank for free, executives handed out scripts and favors like poker chips, and Siegel watched it all from his private booth, smoking like a movie villain, knowing that everyone in that room either owed him something or would soon. If the mob had a Hollywood headquarters, it was the Clover Club. Bugsy was a master at exploiting Hollywood's soft underbelly. He realized that fame came with fear of exposure, fear of scandal, fear of losing it all. He used that fear like a weapon. He didn't need to break legs when he could ruin careers instead. Studio heads paid him off to keep quiet. Agents slipped him envelopes to make problems disappear. Actresses whispered his name in fear, and leading men knew to stay out of his way. In a town built on illusion, Bugsy offered the ultimate insurance policy: protection, secrecy, and silence for a price. His criminal empire in LA wasn't just flashy, it was brutal. People think the mob stuck to gambling and drugs, but Siegel played a much darker game. He had his hands in narcotics, prostitution rings, blackmail, stolen goods, loan sharking, and most notoriously, murder for hire. He didn't just threaten his enemies, he eliminated them. One of the most chilling examples was the murder of Harry Big Greenie Greenberg, a former associate who was rumored to be talking to law enforcement. Siegel allegedly tracked him down and shot him in cold blood. Cops found Greenberg's body slumped in a car in LA, riddled with bullets, and despite being the prime suspect, Bugsy walked free thanks to missing witnesses and mysteriously unreliable testimonies. Justice never stood a chance. And then there was the relationship between Bugsy and the Hollywood elite. It wasn't just intimidation, it was infiltration. Siegel didn't just threaten producers, he sat down with them. He invested in films, controlled casting decisions, even demanded changes to scripts. If a movie studio needed a quick injection of cash, the mob provided it, at a steep interest rate that was more like a death wish than a loan. If an actress was being difficult, Bugsy solved the problem. If a producer got cold feet, he reminded them who held the reins. In many ways, the mob wasn't just around Hollywood, they were in the director's chair. What made Bugsy even scarier was how likable he could be. He wasn't some gutter rat with a knife. He was a smooth-talking, fashion-forward, media-savvy gentleman killer. Women adored him, men envied him, paparazzi followed him, and columnists treated him like royalty. He had the looks, the cars, the mansion in Beverly Hills, and the expensive taste of a studio mogul. He was so good at hiding his true self that most people didn't believe the horror stories, even while they watched bodies drop. It's easy to dismiss a man with a smile, but in Bugsy's case, that smile came with a gun behind it. While Hollywood admired his swagger, the mob began to doubt his judgment. Bugsy had always been a risk-taker, but when he became obsessed with building the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, he went all in, literally. He dumped millions into the project, hemorrhaging money as the construction delays piled up and the budget spiraled out of control. The other mob bosses saw the red flags. Vegas was supposed to be their next cash cow, but under Bugsy's leadership, it was turning into a money pit. And when the hotel's opening was a flop, the cracks really started to show. LA might have loved Bugsy, but the East Coast bosses, they were sharpening their knives. Despite his Vegas downfall, Bugsy's LA reign remains one of the most untouchable, under-discussed criminal empires in American history. Think about it. How does a known murderer operate freely for over a decade in one of the most policed, high-profile cities in the world? The answer is simple. Everyone was in on it, or too scared to speak out. LAPD was deeply corrupted at the time, often pocketing bribes or turning a blind eye to mob activity. Politicians were either blackmailed or bought. Reporters avoided writing anything negative about Siegel for fear of retribution. He didn't rule LA from the shadows. He ruled it right out in the open, with a smirk on his face. His story came to a sudden, bloody end in 1947. Bugsy was sitting in the Beverly Hills home of his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, when an unknown assailant fired a .30 caliber carbine through the window. The bullets tore through his face, blowing one of his eyes out of his head and killing him instantly. It was a savage hit, the kind meant to send a message. Nobody was ever officially arrested. The mob shrugged. Hollywood kept moving, and just like that, the man who once controlled a city disappeared into legend. Today, people remember Bugsy Siegel as the man who brought Las Vegas to life, but that legacy, polished and Vegas glam, hides a darker truth. Los Angeles was his real empire, and while the casinos got his name etched in gold, the streets of Hollywood still carry the ghost of the man who made murder look like business and crime feel like cinema. The old studios might want you to forget it, but the bodies are still buried beneath the glamour. Stick around, this city's full of stories the history books left out, and we're just getting started.